Mute.
Okay, I'd like to call Comox Valley Regional District regular board meeting of Tuesday, March 30th to order. I'd like to recognize that we're on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. And today we have only one director and myself in the boardroom, that's Director Grant, and the rest of the directors are online: Swift, McCullum, Hillian, Moran, Cole Hamilton, Hamir, Arbor, and Grieve. Okay, today we have Article 29 from the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Indigenous peoples have the right to the conservation and protection of the environment and the productive capacity of their lands or territories and resources. State shall establish and implement assistance programs for Indigenous peoples for such conservation and protection without discrimination. State shall take effective measures to ensure that no storage or disposal of hazardous material shall take place in the lands or territories of Indigenous peoples without their free, prior, and informed consent. And state shall also take effective measures to ensure, as needed, that programs for monitoring, maintaining, and restoring the health of Indigenous peoples as developed and implemented by the peoples affected by such materials are duly implemented. We move to item B, which is the in-camera motion.
Move in camera.
Second.
Hamir and Cole Hamilton, thank you. And we will move in camera following the regular meeting according to section 91C and 91K of the Community Charter. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. And we move on to adoption of minutes, the regular board minutes from March 16th.
Move adoption.
Second.
Warren and McCullum, thank you. And is there anyone opposed to adoption of those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried. And today we do have some delegations. The first one is from Tourism Vancouver Island. Can I get a first?
Move receipt.
Second.
McCullum and Grant, thank you. And we'll welcome Anthony Everett.
Thank you.
I believe he has a presentation for us.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm joined on this presentation today by my colleague, Karen Bannister, who will be speaking as well. I believe he's joined. I think he has. At any rate, we'll move on. His name's Callum Matthews, and he may be here to answer questions should you have them. I am speaking to you from Shinamak territory in our home office in Nanaimo, and proud to live, work, and play here. And we acknowledge this territory that we're working on and for. Can I just ask, do I drive the slides or is somebody doing that for me?
Lisa will do it for you.
Okay, so I'll just ask for them to move. Before we move on from this slide, I just want to point out you might recognize some of the people here. If you have a moment afterwards, we have a section on our website, vancouverisland.travel, that is identifying and amplifying stories of the pandemic and the resiliency that many businesses are showing here on the island. And it's called our Island Storm Riders. We are riding out a storm that has hit our industry. We are living that today. And there are a number of Comox Valley businesses that are part of the Storm Riders that we've seen there. And you might recognize lots of businesses on the island. It's been a fun way to give businesses some profile. And so thank you for this opportunity today. I've changed it, I hope, enough, because I think a few of you on this call today have heard me speak recently, and we've changed it a little bit, but we're hoping that this will garner some questions and we can move through it fairly quickly on the Tourism Vancouver Island portion. Next slide, please. So here is some of the team. Tourism Vancouver Island has been around for over 60 years now. We have an industry-led board of directors of 13 business owner operators or senior leaders in those businesses that represent businesses from one tip of Vancouver Island to the other and on the Gulf Islands. We have a small and mighty team, and many of these faces you may have met in the past. We look forward to other presentations to your board in the future. I'm just going to give you some highlights today. This is a strong group, and we're proud to live here, we're proud to work here, and proud to serve Vancouver Island businesses and communities. Next slide. So tourism, there's a whole ecosystem that goes along with tourism. Tourism Vancouver Island helps in this area with our businesses and communities, but our world today of having come through or working our way through a pandemic of the last year, and even before that, is largely dependent on partnerships. There are a number of strategic partnerships that we work with and all these organizations we have various contracts with, agreements with, and MOUs with, and here are a few of them. I would just like to highlight a few that are really important as we move through this pandemic, one of which is the Tourism Industry Association of British Columbia that is actively working and helpful as we work through the pandemic with advocating to all levels of government on the needs of the industry. The other one is Indigenous Tourism BC. We're lucky enough to have an Indigenous tourism specialist, and that comes through a partnership with Indigenous Tourism BC. And the other one I wanted to bring up here, well, all of them are important, is that we are working as one of 5 regions in a secretariat fashion. Very proud of some work, and I'll be bringing that up later, but that is a partnership amongst 5 regional organizations from around the province. Next slide. So here are the island DMOs. This group we work very closely with. We believe in deep collaboration. We early on in the pandemic, over a year ago, we met weekly with this group. Now we are meeting every 2 weeks to share information and create projects together that are helping rebuild the industry and helping the industry survive and thrive during this very difficult time. And of course, we work with all communities in all corners of the island. These are the communities that collect MRDT and have a system in place within their community or their regional district that allows them to lead tourism. And we can talk more about that later, but this is a group of what we call our island destination leaders. Next slide. So our guiding principles that are in our business strategy, business plan that we try to exemplify every day, came about last year with our strategy. These are the same principles that we'll be carrying on into the years ahead in a long and challenging, what will likely be a challenging process of recovery from the current pandemic. Today, I'm not going to go into lots of detail on different research that we have that are showing the impacts and where we're going. I'm happy to come back another time and talk about that if it is of interest. But first and foremost, our guiding principle, it is about recovery. We're still going through a survival period, but the industry will need to recover over a long term. There are businesses that are doing okay, and there are many, many who aren't. And we are working with them on a day-to-day basis on recovery. Like never before, our job is to advocate to various levels of government, particularly the provincial government, on the needs of the industry, the needs of the island, and what we can do to help support the industry during this time. So our role as advocates for our industry has really expanded dramatically over the course of the last year, and I think this will be a legacy as we move into the future. We work on industry and destination development. We formed a destination development plan for Vancouver Island in partnership with Destination British Columbia a number of years ago, and we are currently working to activate that, and I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. We are stewards of the brand here, the Vancouver Island brand, working with all the community brands and making a cohesive presentation to the international world, our domestic world, and the United States visitors that come here and know and love our island. Foremost amongst our key priorities and principles is reconciliation with our Indigenous peoples. It is a big part of our strategy. We're very proud of it. We're building it out right now, and we are measuring our success against UNDRIP, and we're proud to do so. Sustainability is a core value. It's more than a core value. We are actively engaging in a number of initiatives that we're very proud of around sustainability to present our island as a world-class destination, recognizable to anyone who visits here, the priorities that we have as residents, that sustainability is important to us. We've really expanded our services over the last number of years to include a number of staff and expertise to help communities build out their capacity and provide expertise that they otherwise might not have in those communities. And I'll touch on that in a minute. And then, of course, we are an imperfect organization. If there's anything that we've learned in the pandemic is we are constantly trying to learn, be better, grow our systems, grow who we are, and build the most positive relationships we can. And that's a big part of who we are. Next slide. So the 5 strategic priorities that we have as an organization to help steward Vancouver Island and the islands for tourism really revolve around these 5 core areas. Of course, there are many programs and activation under each of them. I'm only going to highlight a few today in the interest of time, but it really does start with destination leadership. We engage in destination marketing, destination development. We've expanded our destination services. And of course, we're always looking to build on being a successful organization, looking at means of expanding what we do, building appropriate relationships, particularly with our Minister of Tourism, Minister Mark. Very proud to be building that relationship currently and actively working with the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture, and Sport on a weekly basis. Early on in the pandemic, like never before in my long career in tourism, we met, and for over 3 months, we met every morning with the senior levels of the ministry. And so it's a really growing relationship, and we're quite proud of it. Next slide. So these are some of the key highlights that I wanted to bring to your attention today that are really important to us. These are cornerstone, not only principles, but areas that we're working in. I mentioned Indigenous relations and reconciliation earlier. We have an Indigenous specialist that works with us. We're about to have another one join us. This is a key area that we're working in. When in two of the boxes here, it mentions the $2.3 million funding window that we've now received because of the recovery that the provincial government has passed on to the industry. Tourism Vancouver Island is stewarding the 2.3. We've just come through an extensive engagement process, building on our destination development plan to put a number of projects into the ministry. We will be receiving soon the ministerial approval of how we plan to utilize the $2.3 million over the next 2 years to really help the industry recover and build out our island destination from a destination development point of view. And one of those ways is we look forward to using signage to recognize the territory that many of us are visiting and our visitors are visiting on as they come onto the island. Another way is through the sustainability. In sustainability, we are currently working on seeking an international designation recognized in the world by the United Nations and the 17 sustainable goal areas of the UN to achieve our international biosphere designation. So we will be a biosphere destination along with one other, all the regions in the province are going after this designation. One in the Okanagan already has it. It is a partner region of ours. We're very proud of this work, and we will be the first set of destinations or regions in the province or in the country of Canada to join 35 other jurisdictions in the world with this designation. Some of the resources that we'll be using, as I said, in the destination development program are going to be offering visitors who visit the island the opportunity to help us keep our oceans clean, putting our oceans at front and center in a lot of our marketing, a lot of our development activities. We have been creating a number of ethical advertising workshops lately that have been very well received by many businesses here. As a matter of fact, we are starting to get engagement from businesses around the world that are interested in how we're talking about how you market wildlife and wildlife viewing ethically. We believe in responsible and inclusive travel. So we have all our marketing systems now reflect what it is to be a responsible travel when you come to the island, what we as residents expect of you, how to travel responsibly and mindfully in a very inclusive way. And that too includes our ocean friendly initiative, which we will be working on into the future. And we have a partnership with the Pacific Surf Rider to help get the word out about how important oceans are to us. We are stewards of the our island destination and islands destination. We believe in deep collaboration and cohesion. Our job is to help steward our businesses, help steward the communities, so that we're all working together to maximize the potential of tourism. And of course, this is all about recovery now. We are entirely focused all our efforts on how we can recover better together, and never before, we believe in a deeper collaboration is needed. And that's why we work with other island destination leaders. We do advocacy. We're doing more research now, talking to not just visitors and travel patterns, but the impacts that businesses are feeling from the pandemic. And I think that will carry on into the years ahead. Under destination services, I wanted to point out that Karen will be talking about our work in the Comox Valley, current work, where we see things going. Very proud of that work, but we are also engaging like never before with other communities, other areas of the island. There are more than are even listed here. We work directly on a program basis. We're doing MRDT renewals up and down the island. Currently, CALM is leading on 3 different areas in that regard. And this is a key part of what we do. We can move, next slide, please. So we're very proud of our cornerstone program, which is the BC Tourism Resiliency Network. It was created by Tourism Vancouver Island in partnership with Islands Coastal Economic Trust early on, almost exactly a year ago. This was created. It came from the needs of business. Businesses really are what gets us out of bed in the morning, helping businesses survive and thrive during this time. And we started gathering information, and we moved through a whole. In addition to funding, we have a suite of experts, I think about 30 of them now, that are helping businesses in a one-on-one way, guiding through the pandemic, helping them change their business, evolve their business into meet the needs, the current needs, the current guidelines, because the recovery will be long. This program has run for the last year very successfully. We are advising over 440 businesses. It is a high-touch program. Each business has a program advisor assigned to them, and we work with them in a hands-on way and try to work with them on a daily basis as they go through this program. So there's a number of ways that we're helping. The last one I wanted to point out here, because Karen may be touching on it in her presentation, but the world is digital these days. Digital supports for business are really necessary and required. The Resiliency Program is now offering hands-on, one-on-one support in an aftercare fashion to help businesses become even more sophisticated in the digital world. This program is very successful, and my day-to-day job right now is to ensure that the longevity of this program, working with the provincial government and other federal agencies to help fund it. Next slide. So Karen is going to go
Anthony,
now.
I just want to interrupt just to say that we're halfway through your slides, but we've only got about 3 minutes left. So just wanted you to know what the time was.
Okay, I will stop and let Karen go. Thank you.
Yeah, I will take 1 minute, and then we can answer questions if you'd like. So we do provide tourism services, as Anthony said, to communities and businesses that require it, where we believe that our services can be of support to the community and business, and where we believe that our services makes the system better. And where we apply this service delivery, we do so with the following 4 values. Deep and meaningful collaboration is important to us. Industry standards and the value of the contextual placement that Anthony just spoke of, we bring that to our contracts to support the community in elevating to that level. We believe that the strategy that's applied needs to be informed by businesses, and so any of the decision making we do with respect to marketing strategy comes from engagement. And as we've touched on, sustainable models for tourism management is really important. It's not just about moving people into the destination, but rather managing expectations of residents as well. Next slide. So I'll just give you 3 very quick examples of the work that we've done that exemplifies those couple of those points. We've worked with Sinanimuk First Nation on a Seisutchin activity book. You may recognize Seisutchin as Newcastle Island. It's a beautiful and sacred place. There we are interested in meeting the objectives of the Nunavut First Nation in driving traffic over to the island. And the activity book we supported on, that was their creation, and we continue to support in their distribution of that book. Where we can really provide value is through our understanding of the industry standards and the value of the ecosystem we operate in. One example of that is that we do provide governance support on occasion, and we've done so in tourism Ucluelet to help them just strengthen their overall board excellence. We've also been working with CVEDs on doing the same with the advisory committee that's been appointed to tourism and the Discover Comox Valley brand. And then finally, I'll just touch on Vancouver Island North Tourism, a project that we've been working on since its inception over 10 years ago. It's a collaboration of communities in the regional district of Mount Waddington. When the pandemic hit, we really wanted to use the marketing dollars that we did have to give back to the businesses so that they could control their own communications messaging. And so we arranged for a videographer to shoot sort of like 30-second commercials for any business that was interested. And then that became their tool for communicating with potential consumers as to their safe operations. Next slide. And because we've talked about biosphere already, I won't go into detail here other than to say we apply the principles of sustainable tourism to the marketing strategy that we do, because we believe that our consumers also need to be educated about how to leave no trace and come into the community and spaces with respect and safety in mind. Next slide. We've already supported Comox Valley on a few things, including, as I said, governance and engagement. We elevated, we hope, the social media channels by applying the principles that we do through our use of the BC brand. Same with images. We've completed a website audit, would love to carry it further to really give the Comox Valley an identity and a brand that's reflected in that website. And our staff have provided training directly to the visitor center staff so that they are now trained on the Destination BC Visitor Services Training Program. They're also engaging in familiarization tours. And we've worked with Black Press. It'll go to press very shortly on the Discover Comox Valley Guide. Next slide. And as I said, we would really like to continue the work to develop a brand for Comox Valley that really exemplifies the amazing opportunities that you have. One of the only places in the world where you can go from a mountain to an ocean in one day. And I think that story needs to be told. We'd like to continue on the governance and stakeholder consultation, because we do believe that the businesses are eager to have their voice. And as we've alluded to, recovery is very important in our industry. And so developing a summer campaign, if we can market in the summer, is going to be very important for these businesses to survive. Next slide. Thank you.
Great. And are you open for questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks so much. Okay, I see that we have some directors putting up their hands, starting with Director Hillian.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks to Karen and Anthony for the presentation. I did hear your presentation yesterday, but didn't take the opportunity to comment. I do have to say that I'm impressed with the breadth and the quality of the presentation, and particularly with your guiding principles. I had the opportunity to attend a webinar last week on the management of the Fraser Valley Estuary, and one of the points that really stuck with me there was that the danger to species that we're currently experiencing, and that if in fact we don't do a better job of preserving that estuary, our whale watching industry is in jeopardy. And it really demonstrated the linkages between the environment, the economy, the values that I think most of us hold. So I was really pleased to see your emphasis on sustainability, and it seems to me that you're making the linkages between all these different elements that contribute to a quality tourism sector. I just give you the opportunity to comment on that further if you like. Thank you.
Sure. again, this is a passion area for us, so I won't go on too long other than to say that it's critical. We believe that a great place to live is a great place to visit. And we have a bounty of things that are before us here on the island, and it's our job to help preserve them. It's not, gone are the days of just promote. People come. I think we can all know and recognize destinations in the world that aren't doing that. And, and I think we now have that time and that window to look after our natural world and make sure that it's not just, it's sustainable from an environmental point of view, it's sustainable for business. We believe business needs to thrive and grow, and profitability is possible, but we also think that it has to be balanced against, all these other things that you were pointing out. And, we could talk long about the whale watching industry and our involvement in it, but we can't ignore, we can't ignore this. We can't ignore how there are species at risk that impact all these other things we do. And so it's something that we will be very engaged in the future.
Thanks very much.
Okay, next we have Director Morin.
Great, thank you, Chair. The benefit of seeing the presentation last night is that you have a chance to kind of digest the material and have some more reflection. And I agree with Director Hilly and the guiding principles. I'm just thrilled to see, and particularly around sustainability and the ethical advertising workshops that you brought up, and responsible and inclusive travel. And I think, we've had this idea, I think, that we should just have a welcome mat out to everyone for any reason. And I like that that you're looking at being more discretionary in terms of upholding our values, particularly around protection of the environment and wildlife, et cetera. And I think of the recently in the news around the tragic event in Soup with the wolf pack that was killed. And I know that we have had a sort of a trophy hunting component to our tourism here in the past, and COVID, I think, hopefully has shut that down somewhat. But I wondered, that seems to be something that probably would be part of that ethical advertising and responsible travel that you would be promoting. And I wondered if you had any comments around that sort of discouragement of that type of tourism, having any ways to kind of mitigate that, or how you navigate that kind of thing when there are still people traveling who have those kinds of intentions that don't really uphold the values of many of us who live here.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment and question. Before this job, I was the CEO of Northern BC Tourism for 9 years, where there is lots of trophy hunting. Even there, this conversation was relevant and important. Here on the island, it hasn't actually come up that much. I think you live in a part of the island where it is, it's happening, it's relevant. Our role is by omission. We don't represent those industries. That's not who we are. We are under guidelines from Destination British Columbia, which also do not do that. There are organizations that, guide outfitting organizations and others that advocate and work in that regard. It's not something we touch, I guess is the best way to put it. I think it's an interesting point, and in part of our journey and learning, we'll have to give some thought to what you're saying. Really what, in this world of ethical advertising right now, we're currently engaged in wildlife from an ecotourism perspective, which is the viewing component. And that's how we're approaching it, making sure that boats that are near whales are over 200 meters away and those kind of things. So your question and comments have made me, I'm going to think about them. I don't really have a good answer because we are not actively engaged with guide outfitting territories. It's not something we do. We know, we know harvesting does happen on the island, but it's not something we're engaged in. So maybe we'll talk again. How's that?
That's great. I mean, I think there's those of us who have the political will to look at those regulations that can support those guiding principles that you have in terms of, you know, we have distances for whale watching, those kind of regulatory mechanisms that can help support what you're doing. And I know the mayor of Sault, Mai Tate, is definitely going to the province around getting some regulations, moratorium on wolf hunting, recreational wolf hunting, etc. So I think those are all, I know that's not specifically in your scope, but I think it provides us with some food for thought in terms of how politically we can support the kind of tourism that we want here. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Director Hamir next.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Anthony and Karen. That was a great presentation. I'm going to echo pretty much what Directors Morin and Hillian just said about the. I'm really pleased to see the emphasis on responsible and ethical travel. And I'm wondering, I noticed in your, and I have two questions, I should say. First question is, I noticed in your partners that there wasn't really a partnership or a sponsorship or MOU with North Island College. And I know they do have some tourism related courses. So just wondering if you could elaborate what that relationship is with the college. And then my second question is just, you know, we know that you've now taken over the contract for tourism for our visitor center. And you have this contract, and I'm wondering about the resources for the contract. Are you being properly resourced to the level that you were hoping? Because I'm kind of hearing a few things that you would like to do. And so if you could just, speak to that. Thanks.
Okay. I'll go with the easy one first, which is the North Island College. I don't even know where to begin because we have such a strong relationship there that it's a long one. Callan was just speaking to a bunch of students on a job forum. The VIU is signified because we do have a learning MOU with them, but on a day-to-day basis, we work with North Island College. As a matter of fact, one of our key mentor, I don't know what the word would be, mentor helps, is an instructor there. His name is Dave Pinnell. He's a dear friend. And so we work with him a lot. I bounce a lot of the sustainability ideas off him. So we're heavily involved, and we've supported their Indigenous program for years. And I'm probably missing people. So, and actually, thanks for the prompt because I owe them an email. They emailed me, and my inbox is getting clogged up these days. So I hope that covered that off. We could talk more on that. It's definitely, we're active with them a lot. The second one is a little bit more.
I'll stop you there, Anthony, and I'll save you the time, and we'll talk about the contractual obligations at another time.
Okay, sounds good.
Are there any further questions? Director Morin.
Just a quick question. You mentioned that you are delivering services for many other communities, and I would suspect that some of those would be handling maybe their own kind of economic development function, and then you're doing a piece around the destination marketing and tourism. Is that accurate, and is that kind of a usual arrangement with other local areas?
So I don't think there's anywhere. Well, we are not engaged anywhere on the island with economic. We're engaged with economic development organizations for what they do, and we handle tourism. But to answer your question, all our work at the communities is with DMOs that are just tourism organizations, whether they're guided. But I guess the key point I would make is in the North Island, the regional district there has tourism. They collect MRDT. We do the work, the services on the ground, and we're guided in our work by an advisory council or a committee, not a society, I guess is the simple way to answer that. And that's how, and we've been doing that for over 10 years. In the world, like Tourism Couch, for example, they are a society, and we're doing work with them, and they're guided by a board of directors. Similarly, in Port Alberni, they're currently forming, they're going through an MRDT process. We expect that they will have a board, and then we will work with that board. There is nowhere else on the island that currently has a model of us working with just the tourism component of economic development. And my own opinion, having been around over 30 years and worked with lots of different models, is that tourism standing on its own is what works best. And that's Anthony's opinion, but an educated opinion. And I am not making a comment on, what's going on in the Comox Valley. I'm just saying that that works best from our perspective.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any further questions. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. Thank you so much for your presentation today and showing us all the things that you do and have to offer. Have a really nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're on to our next delegation, Friends of Rails to Trails. Denise, Colleen, and Jim, I believe.
Thank you.
I'll
Can you
just get
hear
a
me?
first and second before we receive you.
Move to see.
Second.
Grieve and Hillian, I believe. All right, and then I'll pass it over to whoever would like to begin.
Thank you. I'm Denise Savoy, and I'm joined by Colleen Connolly and Jim Smiley, also directors in the Comox Valley of Friends of Rails to Trails. And thank you very much for inviting us once again to update you on our vision of an active transportation corridor on the old Enn rail bed. It seems fitting to follow Anthony Everett's presentation, given the theme of sustainability and tourism potential of our project. Since our last presentation in 2019, can we move to slide 2, please? The next slide. Since our last presentation in 2019, there have been several significant changes as it pertains to the future of the Enn Corridor that bring us today to a strategic crossroad. We're still committed to our vision. There has been the independent MOTI Corridor Condition Assessment Report released in 2020, and which confirmed what we already knew. The cost to reinstate rail is prohibitive with low returns. Projected ridership is minimal, with an estimated 11 passengers per day from Courtenay. Number 2, a decision was released on the Snaw Supreme Court challenge in 2020. And while their claim was unsuccessful, the loss was based on a legal technicality, and the court decision clearly noted that this was in spite of the fact that there's no business case for the continuing use of the corridor as a railroad, as per paragraph 82 of the decision. 3, the BC Active Transportation Strategy released this year proposes investments planned, and I quote, along corridors serving interregional needs. Just in the last month, both the federal and provincial government have made significant funding announcements for active transportation, with the goal of doubling the percentage of active transportation trips, including grants to First Nations for that purpose. And funding announced for public transportation in general was for an electric fleet, bus fleet, not rail. And 4, the Enn Corridor features prominently in the development of our own CVRD, Active Transportation Plan. It is the obvious and only safe north-south active transportation route in the valley. Public support for this trail is high, with over 1,500 signatures on a petition just from the valley here. Slide 3. Thank you. We understand that First Nations are crucially important to resolving the future use of the island corridor. We have met with some of the First Nations along the corridor. Some are openly supportive of a safe route through their lands, and some may want it rerouted from the right-of-way elsewhere through their property. We believe both conditions can be achieved if we're prepared to work with First Nations to find mutually beneficial solutions. First Nations that we met are aware of the economic and cultural tourism opportunities a trail can bring. And unlike rail, a trail can be diverted for a short distance from the corridor. We believe that corridor lands, transecting reserve lands, can revert to the First Nations when trail replaces rail. This can be part of the reconciliation process and perhaps can even be reflected in a possible name, the Reconciliation Trail. The next slide, please. The Enn Corridor is an incredible active transportation opportunity that remains untapped. It links all our communities with distances of approximately 11 kilometers on the average at 3% grade. And unlike rail, traffic on an active transportation route provides economic opportunities for businesses all along the route. The Parksville-Courtney segment is the longest at over 71 kilometers. And given the distance and the minimal projected usage, it is by far the least likely to ever be reinstated. Next slide. We selected the Gap Trail as an example because it is so similar to the Island Corridor in length, in settlement pattern, overall population, plus the highly reputable organization that supplied these statistics makes this a really good example. It was done by publicserviceconsultants.com. The stats show it not only serves the residents, but it has become an economic generator of growing importance. While there are many Canadian examples of successful rail-to-trail conversions, like the Kettle Valley, the Galloping Goose Trail, La Route Verte, the similarity of the Gap Trail give us some idea of the economic impact an Enn rail trail would bring. And this is even more important post-pandemic, with international travel drastically reduced and domestic travel options in much higher demand. And right now, Tourism BC is looking for projects to invest in to support this sector, hit hard on the island by the pandemic contraction. Slide 6. Faced with competing visions, you as our elected officials will decide which option is in the public interest. Connectivity is essential in enabling people to move from place to place. A trail that is not continuous is of little value. The short, disconnected sections of trail that have already been built beside the rails mostly go nowhere because of some 67 bridges and trestles, wetlands, steep banks, and a tunnel to boot. Slide 7. These photos illustrate some of the serious obstacles, the barriers that really we have to bridge to have a continuous trail, to incorporate both rail and trail, I should say. Next slide. This chart demonstrates where the high costs of rail with trail come from. The 2020 MOTI condition report estimated at least 377 million just to reinstate rail at very modest level and with forecasted low passenger numbers. Actual cost of trails alongside rail in the CRD is 2.1 million per kilometer. If rail with trail were done along the whole coastal corridor, it would cost 378 million and result in a total public spending of 755 million, which, given the return, seems neither realistic nor sensible. On the right, we have the rail to trail scenario, and we have tried here to make a reasonable estimate based on the costs of the Okanagan Trail on the rail bed of $240,000 per kilometer. So that's 47 million versus 755 million to do both. But 47 million is admittedly just an estimate. Next slide. And this is why we are here, basically. The likelihood of rail being reestablished on the island is infinitesimal. The First Nations land issue with respect to the corridor can be resolved to mutual advantage. The rail to trail option for the corridor in our CDRD active transportation plan should not be left to some distant future, which is the reason why we are asking for your support and cooperation to undertake an independent high-level cost study to convert the Enn Corridor to trail from Cooks Creek to Courtney. Grants are now available for this kind of project, and whether it was undertaken by you or by us, permission would be needed from ICF to access the corridor for this purpose. This kind of study is crucial to make a knowledgeable decision. And two, as a member of ICF, you can initiate the process to amend the purpose of that organization. ICF is a creature of its membership and operates according to bylaws, of which section 2.5 allows members to call a members meeting and initiate a vote to change the statement of purpose of the organization. This corridor is far too valuable to be left in decay. Doing so benefits no one. Active transportation funding and tourism funding are available now, and there's no better time to get the ball rolling. Thank you so much for your time and consideration, and Colleen and Jim and I can answer questions if you have any.
Yes, I do see a hand up. Director Arbour.
Merci beaucoup pour la présentation, Denise, et ça me fait plaisir de vous revoir. That was a good update in terms of where the Friends of Rails to Trails are at, and some of the movement we've seen in the last couple of years around ICF. There's definitely points to agree with from my perspective. So just for the public's knowledge, I'm the representative for the Comox Valley Regional District on the board of ICF. So some of the things that we definitely agree with is we do recognize there's a need for continued partnership between the Islands Corridors Foundation, First Nation communities, regional districts, and the province and federal government to maximize the potential and value of this asset for the long term. On background, when you talk, Denise, about the reconciliation aspect, it is one of the key aspects of this adventure in regards to the foundation. One of the first true reconciliation and action partnership between First Nations and local government communities. And we are trying to solve problems that date back to the 1850s when British Columbia was nothing but a British colonial office, and working on the Douglas Treaty and the parceling of parcels to basically the private sector and taking away First Nations lands. So it's not an easy one. The chair of our board is Judith Sayers from the I think it's Upachasat First Nation in Port Alberni. And she's also a lawyer, so she's quite versed in terms of the complexities around that we're trying to untangle. And I appreciate the public can grow impatient in regards to the underutilization of the corridor. But at the same time, I have to say that when I got elected in the office, it seemed simple, to lift the rails and put on an e-bike. But I've definitely gained a lot of understanding around both some of the current utilization of the tracks. For example, the tracks are still critical for, it provides most of the line for the propane on the island, for farm feed. There's still basically utilization of the corridor in a small section, and there's potential elsewhere as well. Focusing on the Cook Creek to Courtney corridor, it's no doubt that it's a challenging one, and it's probably one that may make more sense for public transportation or trains in the long term as populations grow. Lifting the tracks, I think at this particular juncture, does not have societal consensus as the first option. And I think as a board, we have to make sure that we manage this asset for the future of British Columbians, and also that once investment flows, it's fully supported by First Nation and regional district partners. You may know that the Comox First Nation itself has not given up on trains, and has talked to us before about light rail transit and the future of their Southlands. So I want to be respectful of all opinions, really, including those of the Friends of Rails to Trails, but there's a lot of hard work that needs to be done in the months and years ahead. And on some of the figure, I think Denise, there was some statement that maybe I would adjust a little bit from on your side, where some of the projections and the numbers, when you take the top numbers and of the cost and the lowest number of the potential passenger utilization in the short term, it does not paint a great picture. But let's also remind ourselves that in the Lower Mainland, we're seeing train investment in the order of magnitude of $400 million per kilometer. And we're talking about potentially for a fraction of that price, utilizing an existing asset and corridor that would connect all the core density of the island for years to come. So it's all about how we look at it. And to me, I initially, I think I had some concerns, but I still haven't seen people giving up on the potential for the train to be reestablished in perhaps working with BC Transit and other partners so that it offers integrated solutions to the islands. And more importantly, I think in the months ahead is just dedicating ourselves to that continued partnership between First Nation and regional districts. So I really thank you for your presentation, and I'll pass over the mic. I've probably talked for long enough. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Arbor. And we do have another Director waiting. Director McClellan.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Denise, for the presentation. There's lots of good information in here for all of us, and I certainly agree with the assertion that having rail service return to Courtney is likely not going to be a reality, just given the economics of redeveloping the rail line and population and the rest of it. I think it's a great aspiration and it would be wonderful to see, but the idea of having a train service that is serving transportation needs in a way that would see regular use and cars come off the road, I think is a lot more than 20 years out. So I really do agree with the idea of converting from rail to trail. And I've certainly been a tourist in a few different areas, and even over in Europe doing bike trips, and it's a wonderful way to travel, and it's a lot easier for tourists that are accessing these kind of trails to spend their money in small businesses, because they really are traveling at a different speed and off the beaten path. So yeah, there's nothing there I don't agree with. However, I mean, I certainly agree with a lot of what Director Arbor is already mentioned in terms of our First Nation partners with the Enn Corridor. And I'm curious if you've had conversations with our Comox First Nation. They would need to be on side with this point of view, I think, for us to even consider looking at supporting a study. I mean, they've got just as much interest in this area as we do. So I'd just like to hear a little bit more about that from you.
Thank you. indeed, we have met with the Comox First Nations, and they were very interested. This was before the pandemic. And unfortunately, at the time we met, despite their interest, they were just beginning a land use planning process, which I think by now they may have completed. And they said they would be interested in meeting with us again. And we fully intend to meet with them to discuss the possibilities, because, you know, we all support train where it makes economic sense. But I think that, you know, there was Director Arbor mentioned, gave the case of, or the example of Vancouver, and for sure that's significant amounts of money, but the population it serves that would be boarding the train, and that's what trains do best, is they are mass transporters, which this train here on the island just can't do. We just don't have the population. And we may in some, you know, some years down the road, but right now, and for as long as we can see going forward, it just doesn't. But we will certainly continue to meet with First Nations. Just 2 weeks ago, I met with Mr. Edwards from the Nanoose Band, and we met with Chief Seymour from the Cowichan, and we will continue to meet with all the First Nations along the corridor, because we agree that I think if we work together, we can come to some mutually beneficial solutions. The real opportunity here, I think, is to think differently. The Enn Corridor served the island before there were highways. And the competition then was a wagon route, and the bicycle had just been invented. And bicycle use now is just booming and is making a really important contribution recreationally and as a transportation mode. So we understand the demand for active, we understand that the demand for active trails is growing and will continue. So I think it's good public policy to support that demand. And as for light rail, we'll certainly have that discussion, but I think we have to remember all the level crossings on this corridor. I think there's 242 of them, and make it very, very difficult to have any speed, at least commuting speed. I don't know if my colleagues want to add anything to that.
I think you answered my question really well, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have Director Hillian next.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks very much for the presentation. Appreciate the information. I'm probably the only person in the meeting today who's actually sat in the driver's chair in that train and driven the train from Courtenay to Union Bay on the occasion of my son's 2nd birthday. So I share the romantic attachment to trains that many of us have. But I do also think your assessment of the likelihood of rail service on the Upper Island is realistic, while also recognizing the complexities that Director Arbor speaks of, particularly in relation to our First Nation engagement. I do wonder, though, the slide on the screen and the question you ask is for our support and cooperation to undertake a high-level study. Can you just say a little bit more about what that would look like? Are you asking us to pass a resolution supporting the concept? Are you asking us to advocate to the ICF board? Are you asking us to help fund something? I'm just not entirely clear on what specifically that would look like from your perspective. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that question. It's an excellent one. And the high-level cost study that we're proposing is, it could be a comparative study. It could look at, we limited it to one regional district because we thought that it would facilitate the process of rather than getting all the other regional districts agreement, just time-wise. As far as we're prepared to do it or to have it done, but we think that it's key to making a knowledgeable decision. And we would love for you to advocate for such a study. We think that would be a responsible way to go. But clearly, whether it was funded by the regional district or by us as an organization, ICF would need to give its permission. And therefore, yes, we're asking you to get ICF's permission to move forward.
All right, so that's thanks. That's more clear. Thank you. That's a level of commitment that maybe more than this board's prepared to go at this point. But thanks very much for clarifying it. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and just to let the presenters know that the request won't be answered tonight, but will be addressed at our next regular board meeting. And we're moving on to Director Arbour.
I'm a second-time speaker. I think Dr. Hamir had her hand up.
Director Hamir?
Thanks, Chair. And actually, I'm going to ask Director Arbour to unmute because the question is maybe to him as well as to our staff. I mean, if a study like this.
Oh, you've frozen, Director Hamir. Director Arbour, go ahead with your question. We'll come back to Director Hamir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so it's interesting because I think in my first 3 weeks in office in 2018, I actually asked that very question to our staff around what would be the cost of looking at a trail alongside from Cook Creek to Courtenay versus lifting the rails. And you know, sometimes there's value in doing an extensive study, but I actually got a napkin answer. And just looking at the cost of comparable projects around. And the factor was quite significant, the difference between the two, obviously building alongside and adding trestles and stuff like that was in the order, I think, as I recall, was 15, 20 million, and maybe lifting the track would be about a couple million. But I think that's, you know, you could do a study that looks at all that, but I think it would still be beside the point as to where the foundation currently is at. And I would even add the foundation, I mean, Chief Rempel is on the board of the ICF, so she's very aware of all the issues that are happening. And second, in order to look at that, I think we have to solve the other problems. You know, if it's going to be a real reconciliation, ICF has 14 First Nation communities that are part of the board. They're not being consulted. They're actually decision makers around our table. And so far, the goal is still to restore terrain. So until I hear otherwise from the First Nation members that are representing their communities to our board, and from the regional districts that are represented to our board, it's hard to get serious, super serious around an effort like that. So, but the question doesn't go away. You know, I think we know there's 100 kilometers out of, so about 50% is trailed, and our area is the worst one in terms of trails alongside the track. But only last month, our ICF staff are members of the Active Transportation Comox Valley, which the CVRD started. And we're very interested to extending into places like towards Royston, connecting back towards the Royston Seaside Trail and onto the Riverway Trail from Courtenay. So there's still a lot of short-term opportunities. And I think beyond asking the CVRD board, obviously this is an Area A, so you would definitely need the support of the director for Area A, I think, to proceed with a project like that. And I have to match it, even if it's $2 million to go from Cook Creek to Courtenay, And if you got the consent from everybody, the province, the federal government, the First Nations, everybody, you're looking at a process, first of all. But second, I would still have to rank it other active transportation priorities around some of our centers. For example, we were just meeting with the Cycling Coalition around improving Royston Road, connecting Royston and Cumberland. So I would have to weigh the potential usage in the short term in relation to other priorities we may have in the region around active transportation. So I encourage continued discussion. And I mean, we've got the AGM coming, so I don't want to sound like I'm closed-minded around these opportunities, but it's just, I think we have to have a little bit of patience, particularly as this vehicle is so important to reconciliation between First Nation communities and regional districts. And I wouldn't want to assume how things will evolve on that front. Thank you.
Thanks, and I'll just reach out to Director Hamir, see if she's available again.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I'll keep my video off just in case the internet kicks in. I think actually Director Arbour kind of answered my question. If a feasibility study just for the Cooks Creek to Courtney section was to be initiated, I would need to see, I think, Comox First Nation taking the lead. I think just on his point around reconciliation, this would have to be something probably that they either co-led with us or, or took the lead on. So, it's been answered, but that might be an opportunity for your group to reach out to Chief Rempel and have some deeper discussions, because if they were very much interested in this, I'm assuming there's all kinds of protocol to go through ICF as well. So yeah, that's just a comment from me. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll follow up on that.
Okay, and Director Greaves.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Denise. But just a quick note for everybody. I think we're going to be discussing it later on in the meeting, but we are not in a good position to put in a railwood trail anyway, because if you look at regions of Nanaimo or Cowichan Valley or Capital, they all have a regional park service where the municipalities and the electoral areas all pay in, and that's how they can build their trails. We do not. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any further questions. So I'll ask, is there anyone opposed to receipt of the delegation? And hearing and seeing none, that's carried. Thank you so much to Rails to Trails and to Denise.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, and we will, as I said, be discussing this at the next regular board meeting. Okay, so we're on to reports. And the first one we have is renewal of service contract for Comox Valley Community Health Network.
Move receipt.
Grant and Hillian, thank you. And I'll pass it over to staff.
Thank you very much, Chair and Directors. We don't have any additional comment other than the report, and the recommendation would be to enter into this contract. But if you have any questions, we're available to answer.
And I don't see, oh, yes, I do. Director Morin.
Great, thank you, Chair. I was just curious. I know that the Community Health Network has taken under their umbrella the Comox Valley Drug Strategy initiative, and there's been some discussion around broadening that to a regional perspective. And I just wondered if that entered into any of the discussion about the renewal in terms of additional resources to carry that forward on more of a regional level. The city of Courtney has been providing a lot of the resources, but it is intended to be a regional strategy. And I just was curious whether staff had any information about whether that had been discussed as part of the contract renewal or going forward.
Not with respect to this. This is more or less the support for the network, and the network is more the coordinator in the discussion of the initiatives as opposed to the undertaking of programs. So that would probably be part of a separate discussion with Island Health or other potential funders with respect to the actions that need to be taken.
I just thought that there would be they would require further resources. So but if it hasn't been brought up, then I guess it will be something down the line. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Grieve, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you've heard me speak out on this issue of men's health. And I have deep concerns about the lack of proportionate representation from males on this program. I know when we first was kicked off in the inaugural at the Florence Filberg, there was a lot of guys there, you know, doing the dot democracy and you know, drawing the posters and everything. But it seems to me that we're in a place right now where, you know, we just had the new stats come out for opioid overdoses. Now, 2020, we had 1,726 over the year, with 81 in January of 2020. Well, January 2021 saw 165 overdoses, of which over 80% are males. 80% are young men between 20 and 40 years old. Suicides are also very prevalent in that. Also, of course, you know, the ramifications of the lack of the ability to reach out to men, because obviously they don't even tell their friends what's going on. They don't tell their partners. We see now where 90% of all assaults and almost all sexual assaults are perpetrated by men. I know this is a tough question, and I heard Viha got in touch with me, as you probably know, and said that, well, you do have programs for men, but the problem is nobody's using them. So I think we're at a juncture where we need to really rethink how we stem this at the source. And it's not going to be easy. I do think there must be comparatives out there in the world today that are successful, but just the fact that there's lack of any representation is very troubling. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Grieve. And I think that's something that we talked about last time with Lindsay as well, and that it was an area of concern for her. And thank you for bringing it up, because I think that's important to keep voicing that. Director Hamir?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And as the RD rep on the Health Network, I just wanted to comment on Director Morin's question that I don't think it's been discussed at the Health Network to broaden the drug strategy to a regional level. But if that was the way of if this board felt that that was of interest, I think the Health Network would be very open to, a request, and that the resources that are already being made available by Island Health could be sort of reconfigured to meet that need. So unless this board feels that they want to add to those resources, the Health Network is able to basically shape their own work plan based on the needs of the community. I do have to say though that our Health Network has taken on a lot, and they had to actually pare back on all of the activities that they were doing. So just to keep that in mind. And yeah, to Director Grieve's comment on the representation of men, absolutely, that is an issue that that Lindsay has been looking at, and I've sent her the names of a few men that I know are working in men's health. So I'm hoping to see more men appear on the coordinating committee.
Thank you. Director Hillian.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly don't want to delay the support of this incredibly valuable program, but I did just want to share that I've had the opportunity to speak with Director Grieve and others with regards to men's health. We've also had the opportunity to reach out to a number of the men's health providers in the community here, and there's considerable interest in a shared conversation related to men's health that I think I'll be asking Director Grieve to co-facilitate with me in the weeks to come. And I think there are opportunities to bring both more awareness and to hopefully generate more support. There are some people doing some really good work in our community. I think they need some additional support and resources to continue that work, and that we actually could make a dent in things like the opioid crisis. So I just wanted to share that with the board. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Morin.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up that the drug strategy component, which is under the umbrella of the health network now, does have a fairly good representation of men, particularly those with lived experience with substance use and mental health. And Director Cole Hamilton is also part of that. So, you know, Director Grieve, I think it might be great to loop you in with the drug strategy folks, because I think that might be a good avenue. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that there are men involved in some aspects of some of the work that the health network is doing, but just unfortunately not on the actual board representation, I guess. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any further hands. And we are still on receipt. It's the vote of the full board. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. And
Move
there's
the recommendation.
Helene and Grant, thank you. Vote of the full board. Anyone opposed to the recommendation? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. Thank you. We're on to item 2, which is taking bylaw amendments, animal control related parks and noise violations.
Move report.
Second.
Grieve and Hillian, thank you. Okay. And you have the report in front of you. Are there any questions? All right, it's a vote of the areas. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried.
I'll move the recommendation.
Hamir and
Second.
Cole Hamilton, thank you. And that is the amendment to bylaw 104 for first, second, and third readings. The vote of the areas. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. We're on to bylaws and resolutions for first and second reading. And the first one we have is bylaw 645, the Comox Valley Animal Control Extended Service Conversion bylaw.
Moved.
Second.
Grant and Grieve, thank you. This is for first and second, a vote of the full board. Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. We're on to item 2.
So
bylaw.
moved.
Second.
Thank you, Cole Hamilton and Grant. Bylaw 646, the fireworks regulation for first and second reading.
Moved.
Oh, I do see a hand. Director Hillian?
Thank you, Chair. I don't believe I've had the pleasure of being at this board when fireworks has been discussed before, and other directors may know that every year on Halloween we get literally dozens of complaints and concerns about frightened animals and people as a result of fireworks, which are banned in the city but can be purchased in the regional district. And I'm just wondering where this particular bylaw amendment sits in relation to that. I know it's primarily to address noise, but I'm wondering if it's been given any consideration related to the regulation of fireworks otherwise.
There are two, Madam Chair, to answer the question, there are 2 separate initiatives being undertaken by the electoral area directors. What is in front of you now is the consolidation of regulatory bylaws into one, using the fireworks regulation service as the groundwork to bring in or roll in other services. The electoral area directors have also asked for staff to report back on fireworks regulations themselves and options with respect to changes that may closer align the rural areas with the municipalities. So that is a report that will come forward to the electoral area directors, but in turn, any actions come forward to the board for their consideration. And one of the things that the EEA directors have asked of staff is just to coordinate these efforts or to find out where the other municipalities and Comox First Nations are, and staff are presently undertaking that work right now.
Thanks very much. Much appreciated.
Okay, we've had a first and second for the fireworks regulation bylaw. It's a vote of the full board. Anyone opposed to first and second reading? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried unanimously. We're on to first, second, and third readings for bylaw number 652, the municipal ticketing information bylaw.
Move first, second.
Grant and Grieve, thank you. Any further discussion? It's a vote of the full board. Anyone opposed to first and second? Hearing and seeing none, that is carried. And we're on to third reading.
Move third.
Grieve and Grant, thank you. And again, vote as full board. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. We're on to bylaws for adoption. Item 4 is bylaw number 642, the financial plan and capital expenditure.
Move adoption.
Second.
Hillian and Hamir, thank you. Any further discussion? Again, it's the full board and it's for adoption. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried unanimously. We're on to new business. Item 1, Director Arbor, he's going to talk about FCM.
Move
Director Grieve, and I didn't get the second on that.
Second.
Director Grant, thank you. Director Arbor, are you available?
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. Yeah, so thanks for the board consideration. I thought I would throw my hat in the ring for FCM. And I guess part of my motivations is just, I think that connectivity with the rest of the country as both the federal and provincial governments continue to respond to the pandemic and the need for alignment between everybody. And I know it's been historically important how those programs are designed, and I know FCM has quite a voice in terms of what the priorities are for our community. So I intend to run a good campaign and see if I can fit in. There's 8 members that are representing BC on the 72 persons board. It's pretty competitive, but with your support, I'll be happy to make a run at it.
Great, thanks. So is there any further discussion? Director Hamir.
I just wanted to give Director Arbor, thank you for putting his name in the running and for offering to represent both the Comox Valley and the province of BC on this board. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Grieve.
Yes, I'll echo that. And having served on the board, I can tell you that it's an incredible outfit. I mean, they have staff like you wouldn't believe. In fact, I think they poach staff from senior government level. When they write policy, quite often it disappears into the offices at Capitol Hill and turns up 6 months later with somebody else's name signed on the bottom. So, I mean, it's very important that we have a voice on the West Coast, because when you come from the West Coast, people tend to roll their eyes a little bit when they talk to you. But, there's some very important values we have out here that need explaining to the rest of Canada, and not least of which is our neighboring province, Alberta. But that being said, it's all about local government, municipal government, and we have issues, as you saw in the last municipal election in Toronto, where the premier arbitrarily overruled everything and changed all the rules in midstream. Those kind of things shouldn't be happening. I know we're not part of the charter. We're children of the province, but bit by bit, inch by inch, FCM is whittling away at that, and we will be recognized as a very serious order of government for the people. So good luck, Daniel.
Thank you. And Director Hillian.
Thank you, Chair. I believe FCM is a very valuable organization. Nearly every week we see another announcement of their influence being felt in federal government policy that's benefiting municipal government. And I can't think of anyone better than Director Arbour to take his considerable leadership skills to the national level and represent us on that board. Thank you.
Thank you. So there is no receipt for this. We're just on the requested action.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, but there is receipt. I apologize. Anyone opposed to receipt? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. Now we're on requested action.
Move the action.
Cole Hamilton and Grant. Is there any further discussion? And it's a vote of the full board. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried unanimously. Congratulations, Director Arbour. And we're on to the addendum. And we need to vote on consideration of the addendum.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Grieve and Humir, thank you. Anyone opposed?
Hi there. I'll have the Big Mac meal, please. Coke.
I take it all back.
I didn't know they had a McDonald's on Hornby.
I'll take that as nobody being opposed. So we will consider the addendum. And it is on the Regional Park Service background study.
Move receipt.
Second.
Grant and Hillian, thank you. And I will pass it to staff.
Thank you very much. And our Manager of Parks, Mark Harrison, is on the line and will explain what is proposed for this background study and answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Russell. To the chair, through the chair to the board. I'm here today to request approval for additional allocation of funds for the Regional Park Service background study. At the December 15th CBRD board meeting, the board did commit $25,000 to fund a Regional Park Service background study. Since that time, staff have received some quotes, and the preferred quote from our preferred consultant was for $36,500 to perform that study work. So staff are asking for an additional $15,000 of funding allocation to engage this preferred consultant. I think it is worthy to note that this allocation will not result in any sort of budget amendment, and the requested funds would come from unallocated funds in the feasibility study service. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? No, I don't see any. So we're on receipt. So vote of the full board. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that's carried. And there is a recommendation.
Move.
Second.
Grant and Cole Hamilton, thank you. And that's that CBRD commit an additional $15,000 for the regional feasibility study. Any further comments or questions? Again, it's the vote of the full board. Anyone opposed?
I'll put an opposed vote on that one.
Okay. Director Arbour, opposed? And that's carried. And we will move